Don't touch the precision rifles. The instruction came flat and professional, delivered without malice but with absolute finality. She nodded once, stepping back from the custom shooting bench where a $15,000 competition rifle lay waiting. Morning fog hadn't lifted from the Montana valleys yet, but the Black Rock Precision Shooting Complex was already alive with purpose. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The annual International Long Range Championship had drawn the world's most elite marksmen to this remote facility, carved into the eastern slopes of the Glacier Peak Wilderness. Competitors had traveled from as far as Norway and New Zealand, bringing equipment worth more than luxury cars and reputations, built over decades of dominating shooting sport's most demanding disciplines. Sarah Shung watched the controlled chaos unfold around her, clipboard in hand and observer credentials hanging from her neck. To the seasoned competitors and their support teams, she appeared exactly as intended, another administrative functionary, whose role involved scheduling and paperwork rather than trigger time. Her plain khaki clothing bore no sponsor logos, no team patches, no indicators of competitive experience. Even her posture suggested someone more comfortable behind a desk than prone behind a rifle. The competition rifles represented the absolute pinnacle of ballistic engineering. Each custom-built system incorporated decades of technological advancement, from carbon fiber stocks that eliminated thermal drift to barrel assemblies machined to tolerances measured in 10,000ths of an inch. The optics alone cost more than most people's annual salaries, featuring German glass and computer-assisted calculations that could compensate for atmospheric conditions, down to microscopic variations in air density. Master gunsmith Jake Morrison supervised the equipment staging area with the protective intensity of someone whose reputation depended on flawless mechanical performance. His weathered hands moved over each rifle system with reverential care, checking scope mounts and verifying zero settings that had been confirmed and reconfirmed during weeks of preparation. Morrison had built rifles for Olympic champions and military precision units, but this competition pushed even his exacting standards to their limits. The target that had drawn these shooters to Montana defied conventional understanding of what was achievable with small arms fire. Designated target apex, it sat at a measured distance of 2,847 yards across a valley carved by glacial action millennia ago. The steel plate measured exactly 12 inches square, a target that appeared no larger than a postage stamp when viewed through the most powerful competition optics available. But distance alone wasn't what made target apex legendary among precision shooters. The valley's unique topography created wind conditions that shifted unpredictably between the shooting line and target area, with thermal updrafts from sun-heated rock faces mixing with cooling downdrafts from snow-covered peaks. Atmospheric pressure variations could swing by significant margins within minutes, affecting bullet trajectory in ways that challenged even the most sophisticated ballistic computers. 3 years running, target apex had remained unconquered. Shooters who could consistently place rounds into playing card-sized groups at half that distance found their bullets missing the steel entirely, deflected by wind currents that seemed to mock every calculation and prediction. The target had earned its nickname among competitors, the Humbler. Morrison glanced up as Sarah approached the equipment area, his experienced eye automatically cataloging her appearance. Clean boots but no wear patterns from prone shooting positions. Hands that showed no calluses from operating bolt actions under time pressure. Even her gait lacked the careful deliberation that marked shooters accustomed to moving between firing positions without disturbing precise equipment setups. "Ma'am, these rifles are competition only," Morrison said, his tone carrying the patient authority of someone who'd explained this policy countless times to curious spectators. "Insurance liability, competition shooters only, no exceptions." He gestured toward the gallery area where spotting scopes were set up for observers, then immediately returned his attention to adjusting a bipod assembly. Effectively dismissing her from his immediate concerns, Sarah acknowledged the instruction with a simple nod that carried no hint of argument or wounded pride. Her response was economical and professional, suggesting someone accustomed to working within established protocols rather than challenging them. She moved toward the designated observer area without comment, finding a position where she could watch the proceedings without interfering with the complex choreography of competition preparation. What Morrison couldn't know, what virtually no one at the competition knew, was that Sarah's observer credentials masked clearances that operated in classifications far beyond civilian sporting events. Her presence at Blackrock had been arranged through channels that bypassed normal registration procedures entirely, part of an evaluation process that couldn't be explained to competition organizers or participating shooters. Colonel Patricia Williams, monitoring from the Range Command Center, understood the delicate balance required. Sarah was here for reasons that demanded operational security, carrying credentials that would raise questions no one was authorized to answer. The competition provided perfect cover for assessment activities that needed to remain invisible until circumstances demanded otherwise. The morning routine continued around her as competitors made final preparations for their assault on target. Apex. Shooting positions were refined with micrometric precision, wind meters deployed at multiple points along the valley, and spotting teams established communication protocols that would provide real-time atmospheric updates during live fire. The entire complex hummed with the focused energy that preceded high-stakes competition, where years of preparation would be validated or shattered by trigger pulls measured in milliseconds. Sarah remained in the observer area, watching without judgment as Morrison maintained his protective stance around the precision rifles. His caution was entirely appropriate, even admirable. These weapons represented not just financial investments, but technological achievements that pushed the boundaries of what was mechanically possible. Each rifle embodied thousands of hours of development work, incorporating innovations that often found their way into military applications where precision meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. The first competitors began their approach to target Apex as the morning sun finally burned through the valley fog, revealing the full scope of the challenge that awaited. Through high-powered spotting scopes, the steel target became visible as a distant glint against the rocky slope, seemingly impossibly small and remote across the expanse of wilderness terrain. Marcus Thompson, the defending long-range champion from Texas, settled into position behind his custom rifle with movements refined through countless competitions. His spotter, Danny Rodriguez, deployed atmospheric monitoring equipment that would provide real-time environmental data throughout their shooting sequence. Both men carried themselves with the quiet confidence that marked true professionals in any demanding discipline. Thompson's rifle represented 18 months of development work with Morrison's shop, incorporating barrel metallurgy advances and action timing that had been tested across thousands of rounds in conditions ranging from Arctic cold to desert heat. The scope alone had cost more than most competitors' entire rifle systems, featuring German optics and computer-assisted ranging that could calculate ballistic solutions faster than human shooters could process the information. As Thompson prepared for his first shot at target Apex, the morning air carried a tension that seemed to affect even veteran spectators. This wasn't just about hitting a distant target. It was about achieving something that had consistently proven beyond human capability, regardless of equipment quality or shooter skill level. The target had humbled champions and broken equipment records, earning its reputation as the ultimate test of precision shooting ability. Sarah watched the preparations with apparent casual interest, but her eyes tracked details that most observers would miss entirely. Wind flag positions, atmospheric monitoring equipment placement, Even the subtle adjustments competitors made to their shooting positions, all information that suggested familiarity with precision shooting far beyond administrative oversight. The morning's first shot would be fired in minutes, beginning another attempt to conquer target apex. What no one could anticipate was how dramatically the day's carefully planned routine was about to change, or how completely it would alter everyone's understanding of what was actually possible. At extreme range, Marcus Thompson's breathing settled into the controlled rhythm that had carried him through 17 years of competitive shooting. His cheek rested against the custom stock with familiar pressure. Eye aligned perfectly with the Schmidt and Bender scope that had been zeroed and re-zeroed until its adjustments were predictable to the single click. The rifle felt like an extension of his nervous system, every component tuned to respond to microscopic inputs. Winds shifting southeast, 2 to 4 miles per hour at your position, Danny Rodriguez murmured through the communication headset, his voice barely audible even at close range. The spotter's role demanded constant atmospheric monitoring, tracking conditions that could change between the moment a trigger was pressed and when the bullet reached its destination nearly 4 seconds later. Through her position in the observer gallery, Sarah watched the intricate dance of preparation that marked elite-level precision shooting. Thompson's ritual was methodical and unchanging, the same sequence of adjustments and verifications he'd performed at competitions from Scotland to South Africa. His support team moved with choreographed efficiency, checking equipment and monitoring conditions with the attention to detail that separated professionals from hobbyists. The Blackrock facility's design maximized every advantage available to shooters attempting the seemingly impossible shot. Concrete shooting benches were anchored deep into bedrock to eliminate vibration, their surfaces machined flat to tolerances that ensured perfect rifle stability. Wind flags positioned at 100-yard intervals down the valley provided visual references for air movement, though experienced competitors knew that conditions at the target could differ dramatically from readings at the firing line. Brian Murphy, the competition director, maintained constant radio contact with spotting teams positioned throughout the valley. His decades managing precision shooting events had taught him to read environmental signs that most observers missed entirely, the way morning shadows affected thermal currents, how cloud formations 3 miles away would influence wind patterns at the target area within minutes. Murphy's job was ensuring fair conditions for all competitors, a task complicated by target apex's location in terrain that seemed designed to confound ballistic predictions. Sarah's attention moved between Thompson's preparations and the sophisticated meteorological equipment deployed around the facility. Automated weather stations recorded atmospheric pressure, humidity, and temperature variations with laboratory precision, feeding data to ballistic computers that could calculate trajectory solutions in real time. The technology represented decades of advancement in precision shooting support, yet Target Apex had consistently defeated every electronic advantage competitors could deploy. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The steel target itself was barely visible through the powerful spotting scopes available to observers, appearing as little more than a metallic glint against the rocky slope nearly 3 kilometers away. At that distance, Earth's rotation became a factor requiring compensation, with the Coriolis effect deflecting bullets by measurable amounts. Even the ammunition required specialized consideration, custom-loaded cartridges using match-grade components selected for consistency that exceeded military specifications. Jennifer Walsh, a former military sniper turned competitive shooter, occupied the position adjacent to Thompson's setup. Her rifle bore the distinctive characteristics of someone who'd learned precision shooting in environments where missing meant consequences far beyond lost competitions. The weapon showed subtle modifications that spoke of practical field experience. Surfaces dulled to eliminate reflection, controls position for operation with gloved hands. Even the scope mounting system designed for repeated disassembly and reassembly without losing zero. Walsh's approach to target apex differed markedly from the pure sporting methodology employed by most competitors. Her environmental assessment included factors that civilian shooters rarely considered: how wind direction might change based on time of day, how atmospheric stability could shift as the sun heated different portions of the valley, even how her own body heat might create thermal currents affecting bullet flight at extreme ranges. "First relay, prepare for live fire," Murphy announced over the facility's communication system. The words carried weight beyond their simple meaning, marking the transition from preparation to performance that defined competitive shooting. Spectators in the gallery fell silent, understanding that conversations could distract shooters whose concentration required absolute mental focus. Sarah observed the subtle changes that marked this transition. Thompson's breathing deepened slightly as he entered the mental state that elite shooters described as the zone, a condition of focused awareness where external distractions faded and attention narrowed to the essential elements of sight picture, trigger control, and follow-through. His spotter shifted position to optimize visibility through the high-powered scope that would track bullet impact, providing immediate feedback on shot placement. The ammunition Thompson had selected represented months of development work with custom loading techniques that pushed consistency to theoretical limits. Each cartridge contained powder charges weighed to individual granules, bullets selected for weight uniformity measured in fractions of grains, and cases prepared with dimensional precision that exceeded factory specifications by significant margins. The investment in ammunition alone approached the cost of luxury automobiles, reflecting the financial commitment required to compete at the highest levels. Wind conditions across the valley showed the complexity that made target apex such a formidable challenge. Flags near the firing line indicated steady airflow from the northwest, but spotting teams positioned at intermediate distances reported entirely different patterns. Thermal currents rising from sun-heated rock faces created updrafts that could lift bullets above their intended trajectory, while cool air descending from snow-covered ridgelines generated downdrafts that had the opposite effect. The ballistic computer attached to Thompson's rifle calculated solutions based on current atmospheric readings, but experienced shooters understood that computers could only process the data they received. Conditions between the muzzle and target remained largely unknown variables that required intuitive compensation based on experience and educated guesswork. This limitation had contributed to target apex's unconquered status. The shot demanded human judgment that exceeded the capabilities of even the most sophisticated technological assistants. Sarah's position in the observer area provided an excellent view of the entire shooting complex, but her attention focused on details that most spectators overlooked. The way spotters positioned themselves to minimize scope shadow, how competitors adjusted their shooting positions to accommodate equipment that wasn't quite standard, even the subtle communication patterns between team members who'd worked together through multiple seasons of competition. Her clipboard contained official observer documentation, but the notes she made would never appear in competition records. The information being gathered served purposes that had nothing to do with sporting events or recreational shooting, though those purposes remained carefully concealed behind her administrative cover. The clearances that had gained her access to BlackRock operated through channels that most facility personnel would never encounter. Dr. Amanda Foster, the competition's chief range safety officer, monitored conditions from a position that provided oversight of all shooting activities. Her responsibilities extended far beyond ensuring safe gun handling. The extreme ranges involved at BlackRock required constant vigilance for environmental factors that could affect bullet trajectories in ways that might endanger spotting. Teams or facility personnel positioned throughout the valley. Foster's background included advanced degrees in physics and ballistics engineering, qualifications that were essential for managing competitions where bullets traveled distances that pushed the boundaries of small arms capabilities. Her understanding of external ballistics helped competitors optimize their equipment and techniques, but even her expertise couldn't eliminate the fundamental unpredictability that made target apex such an extraordinary challenge. The morning sun climbed higher above the eastern ridgeline, beginning to generate the thermal effects that would complicate shooting conditions as the day progressed. Experienced competitors knew that the optimal window for attempting target apex occurred during the brief period after sunrise when atmospheric conditions remained relatively stable, before solar heating created the convection currents that would make accurate shooting nearly impossible. Thompson's final preparations included a ritual that veteran competitors recognized as the mental transition to live fire. His movements became more deliberate, his communication with his spotter reduced to essential information only, and his entire focus narrowed to the fundamental elements that would determine success or failure over the next few seconds. The shot that had eluded the world's best marksman for 3 consecutive years was about to be attempted once again. Sarah watched these preparations with apparent casual interest, but her trained eye cataloged details that revealed deep familiarity with precision shooting protocols. The way she anticipated equipment adjustments before spotters made them, how her gaze tracked wind flag movements that most observers ignored, even her unconscious positioning that optimized her view of both the shooting line and target area. All subtle indicators that suggested experience far beyond administrative observation. Thompson's finger found the trigger with the familiarity of 17 years in competitive precision shooting. The first shot broke clean and smooth, the rifle's recoil absorbed perfectly by his positioning and the custom-tuned muzzle brake that redirected gases with surgical precision. Through the spotting scope, Danny Rodriguez tracked the bullets. 4-second flight across the Montana Valley. Miss, low left, approximately 8 inches, Rodriguez reported, his voice maintaining the clinical detachment that marked professional spotting. The bullet had struck rock face well short of target apex, deflected by atmospheric conditions that their most sophisticated instruments had failed to predict accurately. Thompson cycled the bolt with mechanical precision, chambering another round. While processing the environmental information, his ballistic computer suggested a correction, but experienced competitors knew that machines couldn't account for the thermal currents and wind shears that made target apex unconquerable. The second shot followed moments later, met with the same disappointing result. Miss, right side, 4 inches high this time, Rodriguez called. The bullet had traveled nearly 3 kilometers, only to strike mountainside 12 inches from the steel plate that had taunted precision shooters for 3 consecutive seasons. 6 more attempts followed, each representing months of preparation and ammunition costs that exceeded most people's monthly wages. Thompson's final shot of his authorized string missed the target by less than 2 inches. Tantalizingly close, but still a complete failure by the unforgiving standards of precision shooting competition. Jennifer Walsh stepped to the firing line next, her military background evident in the efficient way she settled into position behind her customized rifle. Where Thompson relied heavily on technological assistance, Walsh's approach emphasized fundamental shooting skills honed through combat deployments. Where electronic equipment failures could prove fatal, her first shot missed high, caught by a thermal updraft that her years of field experience should have predicted. The second attempt fell short, deflected by a wind current that hadn't registered on any of the monitoring equipment positioned throughout the valley. 8 rounds later, Walsh had duplicated Thompson's frustrating near misses without achieving a single impact on target apex. The morning progressed with mechanical inevitability as shooter after shooter attempted the impossible shot. European champions who dominated their home competitions found themselves humbled by Montana's unforgiving atmospheric conditions. Military precision specialists discovered that their combat-tested skills meant Nothing against Target Apex's unique combination of distance and environmental complexity. By noon, 16 of the world's most accomplished marksmen had fired nearly 300 rounds at the steel plate that seemed to exist in a pocket of altered physics. Every shot had missed, some by inches, others by feet, all defeated by atmospheric conditions that appeared to mock human understanding of ballistic science. Dr. Amanda Foster reviewed the accumulating data with growing professional concern. Her ballistic calculations suggested that several shots should have impacted the target based on recorded atmospheric conditions, yet the results contradicted theoretical expectations. The discrepancy troubled her scientific training. Precision shooting was supposed to be governed by predictable laws of physics, not mysterious forces that defied calculation. "Control, this is Dr. Foster," she radioed to the Range Command Center. "I'm seeing trajectory anomalies that don't match our atmospheric readings. Recommend we pause competition for equipment recalibration." Brian Murphy's response carried the tension of someone watching a prestigious event dissolve into inexplicable failure. "Copy, Dr. Foster, but we've triple-checked all monitoring equipment. Readings are consistent across all stations." The pause in competition revealed something far more troubling than equipment malfunction. Conversations between competitors, spotters, and technical personnel began identifying patterns that challenged fundamental assumptions about long-range ballistics. Bullets were behaving in ways that seemed to violate established physics, following trajectories that couldn't be explained by any combination of environmental factors. Michael Barnes, a ballistics engineer whose computer models had helped Olympic shooters achieve gold medals, stared at his equipment readings with visible confusion. "The atmospheric data says these shots should be connecting," he muttered to his colleague, Dr. Lisa Chun, whose doctoral research had advanced understanding of supersonic projectile behavior. "Unless there's something we're not measuring," Chun replied, her voice carrying the uncertainty that marked scientists confronting data that contradicted accepted theory. "Some atmospheric phenomenon that our instruments can't detect." The implications extended far beyond a single shooting competition. If the world's most advanced ballistic computers and atmospheric monitoring systems couldn't predict bullet behavior at extreme ranges, what did that mean for military applications where precision meant life or death? The technology that had seemed so sophisticated during the morning's preparation now appeared inadequate for the challenges presented by Target Apex. Sarah observed these developments from her position in the gallery, making notes that would never appear in competition. Documentation. The failure of conventional ballistic science to explain Target Apex's defensive properties aligned perfectly with intelligence assessments that had brought her to Montana. What appeared to be a sporting event had become something far more significant. Colonel Patricia Williams monitored the situation from a secure communications facility 20 miles from the shooting complex. Her screens displayed real-time data from monitoring systems that far exceeded the equipment available to civilian competitors. Even military-grade atmospheric sensors were registering anomalies that challenged everything the Defense Department understood about long-range precision shooting. The target zone is exhibiting localized atmospheric disturbances that don't appear on conventional weather monitoring, Williams reported to her superiors through encrypted channels. Thermal layering and wind shear patterns that seem to intensify specifically around the steel plate coordinates. The response from Washington carried implications that extended far beyond sporting competitions. If atmospheric conditions could spontaneously generate effects that defeated advanced ballistic systems, similar phenomena might exist in operational theaters where American forces depended on precision fire support. Target Apex wasn't just humbling civilian competitors, it was revealing potential vulnerabilities in military capabilities. Murphy made the announcement that competitors had been dreading. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're implementing a temporary suspension of live fire while technical personnel investigate equipment anomalies. All shooters will be notified when competition resumes. The words carried weight beyond their immediate meaning. 3 years of failed attempts at target apex were no longer just disappointing results. They represented a fundamental challenge to scientific understanding of ballistic behavior. The world's most sophisticated shooting equipment, operated by the planet's most skilled marksmen, had been systematically defeated by forces that seemed to defy measurement or prediction. Conversations throughout the facility took on an edge of professional concern that transcended competitive disappointment. Equipment manufacturers whose reputations depended on predictable performance found their most advanced systems producing inexplicable results. Military contractors faced questions about technologies that had seemed unshakable just hours earlier. Sarah's clipboard contained observations that would be transmitted through channels operating far above civilian competition management. The data being collected served strategic purposes that had nothing to do with sporting events, though those purposes remained carefully concealed behind administrative cover. Her presence at BlackRock was beginning to serve the evaluation functions that had justified the complex authorization process. The crisis deepening around Target Apex wasn't just about a missed shooting competition. It was about the limits of human understanding when confronted with phenomena that challenged fundamental assumptions about physics and ballistics. What had begun as a prestigious sporting event was revealing gaps in scientific knowledge that could have implications extending far beyond Montana's mountain valleys. As afternoon shadows lengthened across the shooting complex, the accumulated failures had created something approaching desperation among competitors and technical personnel. The target that had been designed to challenge human skill was instead revealing limitations in human knowledge that no one had anticipated when the competition began. The suspension had stretched into its third hour when Sarah closed her observation notebook and stood. Her movement carried none of the frustrated energy that marked disappointed spectators or the urgent concern visible among technical personnel, scrambling to explain the unexplainable. Instead, she moved with quiet purpose toward the equipment staging area where Jake Morrison sat surrounded by the precision rifles that had failed so completely. Morrison looked up from the ballistic computer he'd been troubleshooting, his weathered face showing the strain of watching 3 years of preparation dissolve into systematic failure. The man who'd built rifles for Olympic champions and military units now faced equipment that had performed flawlessly during testing, but couldn't connect with a target under actual competition conditions. "Excuse me," Sarah said, her voice carrying a different quality than the administrative observer who'd been dismissed that morning. "I need to examine the atmospheric data from targeting sectors 7 through 12. Morrison's automatic refusal died as she extended credentials that made his breath catch. The classification markings alone exceeded his security clearance by significant margins, but the authorization codes were unmistakably genuine. Department of Defense Special Access Programs, with validation signatures that Morrison recognized from his years building custom systems for units that didn't officially exist. "Ma'am, Morrison began, then stopped as the implications registered. The woman he'd dismissed as an administrative functionary carried clearances that suggested involvement with programs operating far beyond civilian sporting competitions. Her presence at BlackRock suddenly took on entirely different significance. Sarah was already moving toward the computer terminals displaying real-time atmospheric data, her fingers navigating systems with familiarity that spoke of extensive experience with military-grade ballistic computers. Morrison watched as she accessed data layers that weren't visible through standard user interfaces, pulling up atmospheric models that incorporated factors he'd never seen in civilian applications. "The thermal inversion layer," she murmured, studying readouts that revealed atmospheric structures invisible to conventional weather monitoring. 1,400 meters altitude, creating a lens effect that bends trajectories approximately 2.7 degrees downrange. Dr. Amanda Foster approached cautiously, her scientific curiosity overcoming the security concerns raised by Sarah's sudden transformation from observer to analyst. "Those atmospheric models aren't available through our system access," Foster sighed carefully. "How are you seeing data that our instruments can't detect?" Sarah's response revealed capabilities that extended far beyond civilian competition oversight. Synthetic aperture atmospheric radar, operated through satellite platforms that aren't listed in public registries. The department has been tracking anomalous ballistic environments for 18 months. The revelation sent ripples of understanding through the technical personnel who'd been struggling to explain Target Apex's defensive properties. What they'd interpreted as mysterious physics violations were actually sophisticated, atmospheric phenomena that required specialized detection equipment to identify and measure. The target wasn't defying science, it was protected by science that civilian instruments couldn't perceive. Brian Murphy joined the growing group around Sarah's workstation, his role as competition director suddenly secondary to the national security implications emerging from her analysis. "Ma'am, are you saying that Target Apex sits in some kind of natural ballistic defense zone?" "Not natural," Sarah replied, her fingers continuing to pull up data that painted an increasingly complex picture. "The atmospheric structures are being generated artificially, using technology that creates precisely controlled thermal gradients. Someone has been protecting this target using directed energy systems that manipulate local weather conditions." The implications struck like lightning among the assembled personnel. Target Apex hadn't been defeating the world's best marksmen through random atmospheric complexity. It had been actively defended by technology that could bend bullet trajectories away from intended impact points. The 3 years of failures suddenly made perfect sense when viewed through the lens of deliberate technological interference. Colonel Patricia Williams arrived at the facility within minutes of Sarah's analysis, her rapid response confirming the strategic significance of the discovery. Williams' presence transformed the civilian shooting competition into something approaching a military operation, with security protocols that extended far beyond routine sporting event management. "Agent Chun," Williams said, using Sarah's real designation for the first time. "What's the assessment of the defensive system's capabilities?" Sarah's response revealed the depth of knowledge that her administrative cover had concealed. "Atmospheric manipulation effective to approximately 3,000 meters range, capable of deflecting projectiles by up to 5 degrees from intended trajectory. The system appears designed specifically to defeat precision rifle fire, suggesting intelligence about our long-range capabilities that exceeds what should be available to foreign assets." The gathered competitors and technical personnel absorbed this information with varying degrees of comprehension and concern. What they'd perceived as a challenging but fair sporting competition had actually been a test against foreign technology, designed to neutralize American precision shooting advantages. Their systematic failures weren't personal shortcomings, they were evidence of sophisticated countermeasures that could threaten military operations worldwide. Morrison found his voice first among the civilians processing these revelations. "Ma'am, if someone has been actively defending against our shots, then conventional ballistic solutions won't work. The computer calculations assume natural atmospheric conditions, not artificial interference patterns." "Correct," Sarah confirmed, her analysis continuing to reveal the scope of the technological challenge they faced. Standard ballistic computers can't compensate for deliberately generated atmospheric distortions. The defensive system is specifically designed to defeat conventional targeting methodologies. Dr. Foster's scientific training helped her grasp the broader implications faster than the competitors or equipment technicians. If this technology exists and can be deployed in operational theaters, it could neutralize precision fire support that our military units depend on for survival. The weight of that realization settled over the group like a physical presence. American forces operating in hostile environments relied on precision, shooting capabilities that could be rendered useless by atmospheric manipulation technology. The implications extended far beyond a single shooting competition to fundamental questions about military effectiveness in future conflicts. Williams' communication with higher headquarters occurred through encrypted channels that bypassed normal base communications entirely. The conversation, while inaudible to civilian personnel, clearly involved decisions at levels far above routine sporting event management. When she completed the call, her expression reflected the gravity of strategic concerns that had been activated. "Agent Chun," Williams said formally, "you are authorized to demonstrate countermeasures against the defensive system. All necessary resources will be made available." Sarah's acknowledgement carried the professional tone of someone receiving operational orders rather than competition permissions. "Understood, Colonel. I'll need access to the specialized rifle system that was pre-positioned for this contingency." The revelation that specialized equipment had been secretly positioned at the facility sent another wave of understanding through the assembled personnel. Sarah's presence wasn't a coincidental observation. It was part of a carefully planned assessment operation that had anticipated exactly the technological challenges they'd discovered. Morrison watched as Sarah moved toward an equipment case. He hadn't noticed among the competition gear, its unmarked exterior providing no indication of the advanced systems contained within. The case required biometric authentication to open, revealing a rifle system that incorporated technologies he'd never encountered in civilian or even military applications. The weapon that emerged from the classified storage bore no manufacturer markings or model designations. Its appearance suggesting custom fabrication using materials and techniques that pushed beyond current production capabilities. The scope alone appeared to incorporate computational systems that exceeded anything available in commercial markets. "Jesus," whispered Thompson, whose own precision rifle had cost more than luxury automobiles, but appeared primitive compared to the systems Sarah was assembling. "What kind of technology does that thing use?" Sarah's response, delivered while performing pre-flight checks on equipment that seemed more akin to spacecraft than firearms, revealed capabilities that existed in realms far beyond civilian competition shooting. Adaptive ballistic computation, with real-time atmospheric modeling, integrated with trajectory correction systems that can compensate for artificial environmental manipulation. The rifle she was preparing represented technologies that most of the assembled personnel couldn't have imagined, much less understood. What had begun as a prestigious shooting competition had become a demonstration of capabilities that existed at the absolute cutting edge of human technological achievement, deployed against defensive systems that challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of ballistic engagement. As Sarah completed her equipment preparation, the entire character of the day's events shifted from sporting competition to strategic demonstration. The target that had humbled the world's best conventional marksman was about to face technology specifically designed to defeat the atmospheric manipulation that had protected it for 3 years. Sarah settled behind the classified rifle system, with movements that spoke of training in environments far removed from civilian competition ranges. Her positioning was economical and precise, optimizing body mechanics for sustained accuracy under conditions that would challenge even the most sophisticated equipment. The rifle itself seemed to respond to her presence, internal systems activating with electronic whispers that suggested computational capabilities beyond conventional ballistic computers. Asterisk. The scope's heads-up display illuminated with data streams that made the assembled observers catch their breath. Real-time atmospheric modeling painted three-dimensional wind patterns across the valley, revealing the artificial thermal structures that had defeated every previous attempt. Temperature gradients appeared as colored overlays, showing exactly how the defensive system was bending incoming projectiles away from target apex. "Atmospheric manipulation confirmed," Sarah reported. her voice carrying the clinical precision of someone conducting operational assessment rather than competitive shooting. Thermal lens generates approximately 2.8 degrees deflection. At target coordinates, the system appears to be operating at 73% of maximum theoretical capacity. Dr. Foster leaned closer to observe the scope's display, her scientific background allowing her to interpret the complex data visualization. "Those thermal gradients would be invisible to conventional instruments," she whispered. "How is your system detecting structures that our weather stations can't measure?" Sarah's response revealed capabilities that existed at the absolute frontier of atmospheric sensing technology. Multi-band interferometric analysis using coherent laser ranging, combined with synthetic aperture radar specifically tuned for detecting artificial thermal manipulation. The rifle integrates sensor data from platforms that most people don't know exist. The first shot preparation involved calculations that transcended conventional ballistic methodology, where traditional precision shooting relied on environmental measurements and ballistic coefficients. Sarah's system was performing real-time atmospheric modeling that accounted for every thermal structure between the muzzle and target. The computational requirements alone exceeded the processing power of most computer systems. Morrison watched in fascination as data streams updated continuously on the rifle's integrated displays. "Ma'am, that system is calculating trajectory solutions faster than I can read the numbers," he observed. "How does it process atmospheric data in real time?" "Quantum computational ballistics," Sarah replied matter-of-factly, adjusting scope settings that incorporated technologies Morrison had never imagined. The system models every atmospheric variable simultaneously, generating solutions that account for artificial interference patterns in ways that conventional computers can't approach. The rifle's internal systems completed their analysis with electronic confirmations that sounded more like spacecraft status reports than firearm readiness indicators. Sarah's breathing settled into the controlled rhythm that marked elite-level shooting preparation, but her technique incorporated elements that the assembled competitors had never witnessed in sporting contexts. "Taking the shot," she announced, her finger finding the trigger with surgical precision. The report of the specialized rifle differed markedly from the conventional competition firearms that had failed throughout the morning. Instead of the sharp crack typical of precision rifles, Sarah's weapon produced a sound that seemed muffled and directed, as if the muzzle blast itself had been engineered to minimize atmospheric disturbance. Through the high-powered spotting scopes, observers tracked the bullet's flight across the Montana Valley. For the first time in 3 years of attempts, the projectile's trajectory appeared to curve deliberately in flight, following a path that compensated for the artificial atmospheric structures that had deflected every previous shot. The metallic ring of bullet impact on the steel target echoed across the valley with crystalline clarity, a sound that had not been heard at target apex since the defensive system had been activated. The assembled observers fell silent, processing what they had witnessed with varying degrees of comprehension and awe. "Direct hit, center mass," Danny Rodriguez confirmed through his spotting scope, his voice carrying disbelief that transcended professional detachment. The bullet actually changed course in flight to compensate for atmospheric interference. Sarah cycled the rifle's action with mechanical efficiency, chambering another round while internal systems recalculated for the second shot. The quantum computational ballistics continued processing real-time atmospheric data, updating trajectory solutions that accounted for changing thermal conditions with microscopic precision. The second shot followed moments later, its flight path visible to trained observers as another demonstration of controlled atmospheric compensation. The bullet struck target apex with mechanical precision, proving that the first impact hadn't been a fortunate coincidence, but rather the product of technology specifically designed to defeat artificial defensive systems. 2 for 2, Jennifer Walsh breathed, lowering her binoculars with expressions that mixed professional admiration with fundamental amazement. She's not just hitting the target, she's hitting it exactly where she intends every single time. The third shot demonstrated capabilities that challenged basic understanding of ballistic science. Sarah adjusted her aim point deliberately high and left, then watched as the bullet's flight path curved through the artificial thermal structures to strike target apex's center with mathematical precision. The projectile had followed a trajectory that seemed to violate physics, bending through atmospheric manipulation like light through a prism. Dr. Foster's scientific training struggled to process what she was witnessing. The projectile is exhibiting controlled flight characteristics that shouldn't be possible with conventional ammunition, she said, her voice carrying the wonder of someone watching theoretical physics become practical demonstration. It's not conventional ammunition, Sarah replied, chambering her fourth round while systems continued their real-time atmospheric analysis. Programmable projectiles with micro-guidance systems that can make trajectory corrections based on environmental data transmitted from the rifle's sensors. The revelation that the bullets themselves were sophisticated guided systems sent another wave of technological amazement through the assembled personnel. What they had perceived as exceptional marksmanship was actually the integration of advanced rifle technology with programmable ammunition that could adapt to changing atmospheric conditions in real time. The fourth shot struck target apex dead center despite Sarah deliberately aiming at the target's edge, demonstrating that the guidance systems could compensate for gross targeting errors as easily as minor atmospheric variations. The bullet had literally steered itself through the artificial thermal manipulation to achieve perfect accuracy. Marcus Thompson, whose own precision shooting skills represented decades of dedicated training, shook his head in professional acknowledgement of capabilities that transcended human marksmanship entirely. "That's not shooting anymore," he said quietly. "That's aerospace engineering applied to small arms fire." Sarah's fifth shot proved the system's consistency under varying atmospheric conditions. The defensive thermal manipulation had intensified as solar heating increased throughout the afternoon, creating stronger deflection patterns that should have defeated even adaptive guidance systems. Instead, the programmable projectile navigated the enhanced interference with the same mechanical precision that had characterized every previous impact. 5 for 5 all-center hits, Rodriguez confirmed. His spotting reports delivered with the awe that marked someone witnessing capabilities that redefined the boundaries of possible achievement. The atmospheric manipulation isn't just being defeated, it's being completely negated by whatever technology she's using. Colonel Williams monitored the demonstration through communication channels that connected directly to strategic assessment facilities in Washington. The implications of successful countermeasures against atmospheric manipulation technology extended far beyond a single shooting competition to fundamental questions about future military capabilities and technological advantages. "The defensive system has been completely neutralized," Sarah reported after her sixth consecutive center hit on target apex. Programmable projectiles with quantum computational guidance can overcome artificial atmospheric manipulation across the demonstrated range spectrum. The silence that followed her assessment reflected the profound implications of what the assembled personnel had witnessed. Technology that had seemed like science fiction just hours earlier had proven capable of defeating defensive systems that had appeared invincible. The impossible had become routine through the application of capabilities that existed at the absolute cutting edge of human technological achievement. Morrison approached the rifle system with reverential caution, studying equipment that represented advances he could barely comprehend. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "this changes everything we understand about precision shooting and defensive countermeasures." Sarah's response, delivered while securing the classified equipment with the same systematic precision that had marked her shooting demonstration, revealed the broader strategic context that had motivated the entire operation. That was the point, Mr. Morrison. Some capabilities need to be demonstrated before they can be properly appreciated. The classified rifle system powered down with electronic whispers that seemed to echo across the suddenly quiet Montana Valley. Sarah's movements as she secured the advanced equipment carried the same methodical precision that had characterized her shooting demonstration, each action reflecting protocols developed through training that the assembled observers could barely imagine. The weapon that had redefined the boundaries of ballistic possibility disappeared back into its unmarked case with biometric locks that ensured its secrets would remain protected. Colonel Williams stepped forward with the formal bearing that marked career military officers acknowledging exceptional performance under extraordinary circumstances. Her approach carried none of the casual interaction typical of sporting events, instead reflecting the gravity of strategic demonstrations that could influence national security policy at the highest levels of government. "Outstanding work, Agent Chun," Williams said, her words carrying implications that extended far beyond competitive shooting recognition. The countermeasures demonstration exceeded all operational parameters. Washington will be very interested in the full assessment report. Sarah's acknowledgement was equally professional, delivered with the understated competence that marked personnel whose achievements couldn't be publicly recognized due to classification requirements. The defensive system proved more sophisticated than initial intelligence suggested, but the programmable projectile technology demonstrated clear superiority across all tested conditions. The exchange between the two military professionals left civilian observers with the unmistakable understanding that they had witnessed something far more significant than competitive shooting innovation. The morning's events had revealed technological capabilities that operated in realms beyond public knowledge, demonstrated against defensive systems that posed genuine threats to American military effectiveness. Morrison approached with the respectful caution that marked someone who had fundamentally revised his understanding of both technology and the people who operated it. His earlier dismissal of Sarah as an administrative observer now seemed not just mistaken, but almost comically inappropriate, given the capability she had demonstrated with equipment that transcended his professional experience entirely. "Ma'am," Morrison said carefully, "I owe you an apology for this morning's assumptions. Your qualifications were obviously far beyond what I could have recognized through standard identification." Sarah's response reflected the professional grace that characterized personnel whose true expertise remained necessarily concealed behind operational covers. "No apology required, Mr. Morrison. Your caution around precision equipment was entirely appropriate. Security protocols require that certain capabilities remain invisible until circumstances demand their revelation." Dr. Foster's scientific curiosity had been thoroughly engaged by the technological demonstration, her mind racing to understand the implications of ballistic systems that could overcome artificial atmospheric manipulation through real-time computational guidance. The physicist in her appreciated the elegant solution to what had appeared to be an insurmountable challenge, while the strategic thinker recognized the broader applications that such technology might enable. "Agent Chun," Foster ventured, "the atmospheric manipulation we discovered today, are there other locations where similar defensive systems might be protecting strategic targets from precision fire?" The question touched on operational intelligence that couldn't be discussed in civilian settings, but Sarah's response provided enough context to illuminate the strategic landscape without compromising classified information. "Dr. Foster, let's just say that today's demonstration has applications that extend well beyond sporting competitions. Adaptive atmospheric manipulation appears in various forms wherever precision engagement capabilities pose significant threats to protected assets." The implications settled over the assembled personnel with the weight of strategic revelation. What they had witnessed wasn't just advanced technology demonstration. It was proof of concept for capabilities that could neutralize defensive systems protecting high-value targets worldwide. The impossible shot at target apex had been conquered, not through superior marksmanship, but through technological superiority that could reshape fundamental assumptions about precision engagement. Brian Murphy, whose role as competition director had been overshadowed by the national security implications emerging from his event, struggled to process how a civilian shooting competition had become a classified demonstration of advanced military capabilities. His carefully planned sporting event had revealed foreign defensive technology and demonstrated American countermeasures in ways that would probably never appear in official competition records. "Agent Chun," Murphy asked hesitantly, "what happens to the competition now? Do we continue with civilian participants, or has this become something else entirely?" Sarah's answer reflected the careful balance required when operational activities intersected with civilian events that provided necessary cover for classified assessments. "The competition continues as scheduled, Mr. Murphy. However, target apex will be temporarily unavailable due to equipment maintenance requirements. I suspect most competitors will find alternative targets more conventional in their ballistic behavior." The diplomatic language couldn't quite conceal the reality that the artificial defensive system would be dismantled and studied through channels that operated far beyond civilian oversight. Target apex would lose the mysterious properties that had made it legendary among precision shooters, though the real reasons for that change would remain classified indefinitely. Marcus Thompson approached with the professional respect that marked one expert acknowledging another's superior capabilities, even when those capabilities operated in realms beyond his own experience. His decades of competitive shooting had provided enough background to appreciate the technological sophistication required to achieve what Sarah had demonstrated. "Ma'am, I've been shooting precision rifles for 17 years, Thompson said, with quiet admiration. "What you did today wasn't just impressive shooting. It was a demonstration of capabilities that most of us can't even comprehend. That kind of technology integration requires training and experience that goes far beyond civilian competition." Sarah's response revealed just enough background to acknowledge Thompson's recognition while maintaining the operational security that protected her true role in training history. "Let's say I've had opportunities to work with equipment and in environments that aren't typically available to civilian shooters. Mr. Thompson, sometimes the most challenging targets require solutions that conventional approaches can't provide." Jennifer Walsh, whose military background provided context for understanding classified capabilities, nodded with the recognition that marked one professional acknowledging another's specialized expertise. "Agent Chun, wherever you trained and whoever developed that rifle system, they represent capabilities that could change how precision engagement works in operational environments." The afternoon sun cast longer shadows across the Blackrock facility as personnel began the process of securing equipment and documentation that would require special handling due to the classified nature of the morning's revelations. Sarah's presence had transformed a civilian shooting competition into a strategic demonstration that would influence military planning at levels far beyond sporting event management. Colonel Williams coordinated the security protocols necessary to protect the classified information that had been revealed during the demonstration, ensuring that operational details would remain within appropriate channels while allowing the civilian competition to continue without compromise. The balance between operational security and public cover required careful management that reflected years of experience conducting classified activities within civilian contexts. As Sarah prepared to depart the facility, her transformation back toward administrative cover occurred with the same systematic precision that had marked her emergence as an operational asset. The observer credentials reappeared, the classified equipment disappeared into secure transportation, and the woman who had redefined ballistic possibility began to fade back into bureaucratic invisibility. Morrison watched her departure with the profound respect that marked someone who had witnessed capabilities that challenged his fundamental understanding of precision shooting technology. "Ma'am," he called out as she reached the facility exit, "thank you for showing us what's actually possible when conventional limitations don't apply." Sarah's final words to the assembled personnel carried both acknowledgement of their professionalism and subtle reminder of the operational security requirements that protected the capabilities they had witnessed. Remember that some achievements require remaining invisible until circumstances demand their revelation. Today's demonstration stays within this facility until proper authorities determine otherwise. The Montana Valley returned to its natural quiet as the implications of the morning's events settled into the minds of everyone who had witnessed the impossible become routine through the application of technology that existed at the absolute frontier of human achievement. Target Apex had finally been conquered, not through superior human skill, but through the recognition that some challenges require solutions that transcend conventional understanding entirely, the lesson that would echo long after the classified reports were filed and the security protocols were implemented was both simple and profound. The most dangerous assumptions are the ones we make about the limits of what others might be capable of achieving when conventional approaches prove inadequate to the challenges they face. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.